Hello?
Hi.
Are you coming to the happy hour? I need to vent.
I'm still in the office.
Oh my god, are you trying to be CEO or something?
Yeah.
You'll get there, but I'll see you at happy hour.
Today's guest is a New York-based legendary creative leader, Omid Amidi. He's the co-chief creative officer at McKinney, a creative media and influencer agency, and throughout his career, he has worked with brands like Coca Cola, Adidas, Madden, Little Caesars, and many more. Omid joins us to share advice for the next generation of creatives and the important traits needed to succeed in this industry today. Having the honor of sharing an office with him, I can personally attest that he is always the best dressed, casually rocking Rick Owens here and there. All right, let's get into it. As someone who also comes from advertising, I feel like this industry hasn't really done a great job of explaining what advertising actually is. So, from your perspective, what is this industry really all about?
What is advertising? I mean, to me, advertising is like the perfect mix between the right side of your brain and the left side of the brain. And I think I always tell like a lot of students, like we're not artists, we solve business problems creatively, which I think is such an interesting thing because ultimately you don't think business problems need creative to be solved, but they in fact do. In reality, it's this really kind of exciting opportunity to take something that you know needs tangibly to be fixed, but then solve it with like Wyden says, with like jazz. So it's that kind of perfect, weird, amalgamation of two different disciplines coming to one. And the reason why it's important is ultimately is that creativity allows you to break through because it allows you to think of the unexpected, right? Like if the world is essentially made up of specific patterns and algorithms and so on, everyone's going to behave in a certain way. The creative is able to zag essentially, where most marketers and business people will zig based on the practices and the knowledge and the textbooks they've read and the curriculums they've taken. So it's really the only proven way, in my opinion, to allow yourself to completely change the trajectory of your business.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like a part of our industry is also having to convince these brands that like they need to invest their money into, taking creative risks. That's the biggest part of it. Because I think if you don't have a creative or marketing brain, it's a little bit more difficult to see the value.
yeah, because I mean, there is no rhythm to it. Like a lot of things that have really done really well for a brand probably tested really poorly.
Yeah.
So like that's always a complicated thing because you're asking people to take a leap of faith on an idea on a piece of paper. Um, but that leap of faith requires someone to believe that it's going to have the results they need to change their business and to keep their job. So it's tough because you're like it's subjective,
It
it's
really
based
is.
on taste, it's based on influences and whatever you're learning. So like that's always a complicated thing, and I think that's why it requires such open communication between you and the client.
Mm-hmm.
And an understanding. I think it's our job to really understand where they're coming from and the challenges they face. A lot of times I tell creatives like you're usually the best part of a marketer's or CMO's week because most of the time they're dealing with fucking like supply chain issues, tariffs, sales aren't going the way they thought it was. Like so, and then we come up with like ideas like here's these kind of big grandeur, thoughts of grandeur. So understanding both that we need to kind of hold their hands, but also entertain and provide that kind of sense of confidence and optimism in the work, so that they feel confident and optimistic about the work. And then just really kind of sitting down and figuring out what is it that they need to evaluate an idea in order to feel comfortable to sign the dotted line. A lot of times we go in with ideas and we're just like, here's an idea, invest in it. But if you don't give them the kind of things they need to be evaluating based on those business problems they have, then it just kind of becomes like you're just kind of hoping that they sign on a dotted line, that you're hoping they take that leap of faith, and then you're kind of fucked, I think.
Yeah. And I think, like, for me, now when I see breakthrough campaigns, my first thought is, okay, I just applaud whatever team put this together and like selling it through. And I think sometimes people that aren't in the industry, they're so quick to judge campaigns. And, you know, we should care about those people's opinions for sure. But like, you kind of have a different lens because you're like, okay, I know what it's like behind the scenes. I know how many decks it took to get to this one idea. And it kind of changes your outlook on any campaign you kind of see in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hate LinkedIn for that reason because I feel like as an industry we're really quick to shit on other people's work.
Exactly.
It's the weirdest thing.
Yeah.
Because all of us know how fucking hard it is to
Exactly.
do
Yeah.
what we do. Like you're right. There's 50 drafts of a deck just to do a campaign, and like there is 80 million, concessions you make over casting or the idea or whatever it may be. So to get a campaign out that's remotely interesting, is in itself like really cool. And I think we should be applauding people's swings.
Yeah.
Most people don't bat that high of an average anyways. So, and we're already at a place as an industry where people are questioning our value. We don't need people internally inside the actual industry to be shitting on ourselves. This is like, we should be really kind of supporting, and just, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything. So, I don't know. I obviously, like, me and my buddy will joke and we'll make fun of some campaigns here and there, like over here, but publicly, diminishing other agencies' work, or maybe, wow, I can't believe how do they get ad age? It's like shit like that. It's like, who gives a fuck? Like,
totally.
It's just advertising.
Yeah, I love that and totally agree. So with that, can you share a little bit about your career journey, starting from the beginning, just how you got here and where you are today?
I was born in France, grew up in Africa, moved to Canada, went to university there. Like every immigrant, like, kid, you tell your parents you're going to be a doctor. Like for us, it's like brown people. Your parents will only accept doctor, lawyer, engineer for the most part. That's like the three. So I was like, I was going to be a lawyer, but I wasn't. Didn't know what I was going to do with my life, and I was like sitting stoned after a party. Classic college behavior, lost soul of sorts. And I was watching TV, and this show came on. It was on the Learning Channel. It was about advertising, things that I, loved and I'd seen, but I never really thought that people were behind it. Yeah. I don't know why. My brain had never been like, oh, people actually go and make these. I just assumed they're just like, they're ads, they're on TV. So I got super interested. I looked into advertising, and then I got into ad school in Canada. I got hired like a small agency, but once again, I had to look into the fact, like, who was the creative leader? What kind of clients they have? And instantly I was already at odds because I just knew I wanted to do more. And then through the power of networking, I was working in a mutual funds company, and I met somebody through a friend. They were doing the Young Guns competition. He asked me to, help him out. His name is Andrew Livingston. I don't give him a shout out enough because he actually basically saved my career or started my career. But he was like, I need a writer. Why don't you come help me do Young Guns, which was a big competition. And we did it. We actually shot the ad for it, the spec ad. It ended up winning gold. Amazing. And then this was how egotistical I was, that I got hit up by JWT Melbourne to go work for the agency. And I was kind of already learned my lesson. I was like, no, I want to go work for Wyden, Colenso, Droga. So I hit up Droga Sydney. And then I ended up working at Ogilvy because I got hired by Andrew Ostrom to work on, and then I did Share Coke there with a DDB for a hot minute. And then me and my old partner, Luke Accurate, bounced around. And then Fig, and then, McKinney. But yeah, it was very much like, it was a very long story. I think the main things to take out of that, I guess, for any sort of young creative is like, the power of networking, just like meeting people. Like, you don't know, like, I met Andrew Ostrom because he happened to be at Droga freelancing, and we hit it off. And then I saw him at like a Vice party after Droga, and he's like, why don't you come work for me? And that's how Share a Coke happened. I got that opportunity. So, really happenstance. Like JL was, I bumped into Leo a couple times at award shows, and it kind of like, happened, and I just spent 5 years there. Like, you don't know who you're going to meet, and you don't know what opportunities are to come your way. So it's always important to A, always show up, and B, just be a good person, I guess. And then I think secondly, I never had a preset plan. I knew I wanted to be a CD by 30, and I knew I wanted to be a kind of a CCO by 40, ECD by 30, CD 30, ECD 35, CCO 40 was like, I felt was slightly aggressive, but interesting.
Will you say what those positions are? Just
CD is creative director, ECD is executive creative director. So creative director usually means you run an account, maybe two at an agency, and you have a couple teams. ECD means usually you run the creative department or like a big vertical at an agency. And then CCO is like you just sit in the C-suite on top of everything. And that's chief creative officer. But I had no preset plan. So that's why I bounced around to different countries, different cities, because I was like, why not learn from different cultures and different opportunities?
Yeah, that's awesome. And definitely, I think the power of networking is one of the strongest things in this industry and most industries in general. And I always say to like young creatives, especially like how you did Young Lions, there's so many opportunities like that now. And oftentimes, like I've sent it around to like junior art directors, junior copywriters, whatever, and they're like, "Oh, we can't do that right now. We're so busy with the client." And I'm like, I know you're busy with a client and work is important, but I'm telling you for the long run, doing stuff like this is going to be more beneficial. Yes, it's super important to be like really invested in your day-to-day job at an agency, but also like take advantage of the external opportunities as well. And that's also some of the best networking through those things that can help you like get your next opportunity. So I do think it is like super important.
Yeah. I mean, also that stuff too is like, it's the few opportunities where you can kind of just dream uninhibited as a creative. Like you don't have a client. There is no like
Exactly.
rules to engagement. So like rules for engagement. So I did a lot of like kind of competitions because they're just fun. And also
They're
I like
so fun. I love them.
to beat people. So like when I won Young Lions in Sydney, like that was such a cool moment because I was like, fuck yeah, like we're
Yeah.
up there. Same thing with Young Guns. Like I just felt it was, like I said, like it was an opportunity just to think of and doing the work that I thought was the best. And I
Yeah.
didn't have, there's no other chefs in the kitchen.
Exactly. Also, those sort of things, they're usually on a quicker timeline
Yeah.
and you do it so quickly and you set the limit. You kind of can see what you're made of and you're like, wow, I could do this in 2 weeks. I can really, do anything in that amount of time. And it kind of makes yourself a little bit more confident when you face other work.
My rule was 72 hours. I
Wow.
gave it 3 days basically, or 3 nights. So like if I was working in an agency, like it was like, unless we had to like shoot it, then you would build more timeline with it.
Yeah.
But it was just like putting together a day because 3 nights, best idea, put it in.
Amazing.
Don't overthink it.
So, obviously, being an immigrant has played a huge role in shaping your perspective. Can you share a little bit about that journey and just really the importance of having an immigrant voice in the room?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. Being an immigrant is amazing. The reason why I think, I mean, I've been an immigrant my entire life, so I guess it's kind of like I've
Mhm.
never lived in my home country. So I'm Iranian by background, but I've never lived there. I think what being an immigrant does and what it forces you to do is essentially be a chameleon, if you will. Like you have to adapt to different cultures quickly, to different languages,
Mhm.
different ways of behaving, to different rules of civilization, to different tastes and things that work within that environment. And also, it teaches you just to learn how to communicate and socialize in a much more, I guess, authentic way in the sense of like you have to fit in because you're fucked if you don't. So you learn to actually listen more and adapt yourself to be more like to work better for other people in different cultures. So, like it gives you this idea, it's like flexibility.
Mm.
Um, and I think as you work as in advertising, like he just allows you to go into any room and you're like, I can make this work no matter what.
Mm. Yeah.
I think why it's important to have an immigrant voice in the room is that because you have to become such an arduous student of that culture, more so than the people that are in the culture.
Mm.
And because you are a stranger, you learn to be very respectful of it. And you're also much more happy to, if you make mistakes, to listen and learn and be humbled. Because once again, you're a stranger in the house. So I think that's why, like, I think of, like, once again, like, I've been taught by predominantly Black culture, like basketball, hip hop, video games are all things that essentially taught me how to coexist in a lot of ways. And as a result, not only am I super respectful of that culture, but I know I'm a stranger, so I'm always asking questions. And if I'm making mistakes, I learn from it. And it allows you to be a much more, I think, in-depth storyteller because you're able to really kind of dive a little deeper because you've just always been diving deeper into things.
No, that's a really good point, and especially like when creating campaigns, it's sometimes you can get caught up just working within a small, nimble team, and you might like the idea, but it's super important to like check in with different cultures or check in with an outside group or just make sure there is a wide range of perspective because what one thing might resonate with one person might not resonate with someone else, and
Totally.
I think that's definitely something that our industry has had to learn throughout the years and should continue to like really put time towards. Being at a CCO level, like how do you really approach managing and leading creative teams and individuals and different clients? It's a lot of work, and like what are some key things that you do?
Just yell at people and just throw chairs across the room. I have. I actually once, like, back when I was a junior, this is like such a hothead. I was like, we had like a terrible meeting or client call, and I like, whipped my chair across, like, and it went across the agency. And I'm just thinking about, I was like, I can't imagine. And people just laughed it off, and it actually became a joke, and they just like it's kind of like a mythical thing. But like, I couldn't imagine doing it now. But also, just like, who the fuck was I? I think, I mean, it's changing a lot because it's like it. I've changed so much over time. I think becoming a father has changed me a lot. I think also just like working in different agencies has also taught me a lot more about the value of empathy.
Yeah.
I try to lead from a place of empathy and I try to lead from a place of understanding and try to check in as much as I can on people and what are the best ways for them to work and succeed, and then try to kind of mold myself to best suit that. I think ultimately what you're designing to do as a CCO is build different, like for sports knowledge, different playbooks, different offenses for different teams, different departments, different clients, different brands, because they all need something different to succeed.
Yeah.
So what does that look like for them, and then figuring it out, as opposed to trying to get people to fit my mold necessarily. Because I think that's a little bit, that's just gets fucky. There are things I don't negotiate on really, which it comes to craft and creative and always trying to push for better work.
Mm-hmm.
But it is like this, the necessity is to let go as a little bit more than you probably have ever been used to. Because the thing that you're taught as a young creative is like, you're in charge, keep pushing, keep working your craft, don't budge, be almost be hard-headed, kind of mentality. But you could do that as a CCO. So some CCOs do it and are successful. I don't do it, but it's because I fucking hated it. I started CCOs I love, and they were hard-headed and hard to work for, and it was good for me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought mentally, from an anxiety perspective, it was a lot. And I think now that I'm like a dad, I don't want to be a source of anxiety for anybody at any point.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's shitty.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And I think, I've often heard the quote of like, people don't really leave their jobs, they leave their boss or they leave their whoever they're working for, because that's, who they kind of spend the most time with and who can really have the most impact. And it's also probably a lot of pressure in your role, like you're kind of nurturing this next generation of creatives, or you're, supporting creatives and a team get to where they want to go. And you want them to also enjoy it. You want to keep the good ones. So it's also could be probably a little bit of pressure, I can imagine.
I actually don't want to keep the good ones. Like, I think most people do. I always tell young creatives, like I don't give a shit about, I mean, I do, but like, I don't give a shit about KPIs and, the bottom, all the different elements of like the business element for the agency. Like, ultimately, like, I was so blessed in my career, like my first 10 years especially, to do like iconic work, to work with
Mhm.
celebrities, to travel, to shoot, to do all these things. And they were so formative in creating memories because we worked so hard
Mhm.
as it is. We work such long hours. Like they were so formative, and the job was able to give me opportunities and memories that'll last me a lifetime.
Yeah.
um, and I was able to, work my way up and make good money and provide for my family. So I want every creator that works for me to do work that they're fucking stoked on. But to do what they're stoked on and create memories while doing it, I always say, like, you're not like when you look back on your life, you don't think back to yourself like, oh, that was an amazing 30-second ad. It's like, no, I remember shooting that ad in Brazil. That's what you remember.
Yeah.
So I want people to, like, if they can work for me, to do good work, to have these kind of crazy memories, hopefully, and then go off to go make money and do more iconic work and hopefully pay it forward
Yeah.
people that work for them. So I think if they stay working for me and they're still there after a long period of time, unless they're like super, they've built their family and whatever.
Mhm.
But if they're young creators and they're still there, I would almost wonder if I've done my job right, that they
Yeah.
haven't been poached yet.
Cool. That's a really, really great perspective. Um, and it is true. I mean, like, you spend so much of your life at work, and the portion about making memories, like you said, that's super important because, you want to look back and like enjoy the reflections, enjoy the time you spend at work and not just be like, oh, I was stuck doing this or whatever. Like, work is like such a big portion of your life. So it's important to love it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, speaking of just 30-second spots or whatever, and when you first saw commercials, you're like, "Oh, I don't really think about how they're made." Like from your work, can you kind of go through how TV spots are made? I know you recently worked on Little Caesar's first Super Bowl spot since like 2020, so that was a huge moment. So, kind of like what is the process for commercials, and especially Super Bowl commercials, like how much time do you have to spend planning it, and like how does it work in collaboration with the client?
I mean, there's different like levels to, I guess, TV commercials. Really, is like, I think Super Bowl is its own beast because it's such an
Mm,
expensive investment for the brand and the client regarding the media that it becomes this kind of pressure cooker where everyone is both terrified of doing the wrong thing, both
yeah,
terrified of taking big risks, and also just overthinking everything, which I think
overthinking. Oh my gosh, yeah.
could be the death of good work.
Mhm.
I think Super Bowl is a strange cultural thing that, because it's so interesting. It's like the one time where the normal world is actually interested in what we do.
Yeah.
For the most part, they don't care. No one's looking forward to ads ever, except for the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
Um, so because of that, I think we try to ensure that whatever we do, when we're asking for people's time, even especially in that format, that we give them something entertaining. I think that's always been, and I think with Little Caesars, um, it is very much based around this idea of like everyone deserves like a good fun time. Like everyone deserves pizza, everyone deserves fun time. It's meant to always be entertaining and allow itself to give people a smile and a laugh, no different than when you have a slice of pizza. So that one was an interesting project just because it took a lot of different forms over time through the process, and just that kind of um, ecosystem. It was like a 5 month, took 5 months probably, I think it was, and a ton of work went into it. The team was so incredibly um, focused and unwavering, even through the ups and downs. And that is a kind of like, I think Super Bowl advertising is kind of like the level in Mario, the Bowser level at the end. If you don't know if you've played it, but like basically you're running, but if you stop and the back wall hits you, you die. It's kind of like that. You always got to keep moving, um, because if you don't, it's just you just lose so much time that you're just kind of fucked.
Yeah.
But with that said, I think the best recipe of Super Bowl work is to, I think, provide people with a moment of silence in the sense of like it makes you stop for a second. It needs to make you stop whatever you're doing. And either that's something incredibly compelling visual, like Puppy Spider Monkey, whatever it was, or Eat Trade Baby, or like in my case, I don't really lean too much towards humor. Like Halftime in America is an example of something, or God Made a Farmer. Like they just make you stop for a moment and take it in and actually pay attention. So I thought we did a really good job of that in terms of like Caesar's giving someone like people like a very easy to remember visual joke with the eyebrows.
Yeah.
Regular TV commercials, I think those are just, it just depends really on the medium. But once again, going back to it, like I always believe in entertaining people and just doing something that kind of jumps off the screen, whether it's visually or just the content of it. Humor is probably the best way to break through, but humor is the hardest fucking thing to nail.
So true.
I can't, like the Little Caesars team is this like beautifully, fully functioning, led by Jameson and Andrew and Lyle and everybody else. Like I kind of just like poke my head in a little bit for some culture stuff, need some help there. But like otherwise, those guys write humor. It's a discipline that I haven't put enough hours into. So that's why like the best comedic writers are the people that become kind of legends in advertising, with Jerry Graffs and the Craig Allen's art director, Eric Coleman, can't remember which one's art director. But the Scott Vetrones and so on, like that they manage that.
How are you seeing humor break through in social media?
That's because I think humor is naturally people's first instinct. Like people want to be funny, people want to entertain, people want to leave you with a smile. So it's kind of one of the main languages on social for storytelling. Yeah. So people go and do it. I think the weirder, the better.
Yeah.
We do some pretty weird shit, both for Caesars, Texas Pete, Popeyes. Popeyes a little more like playing within culture and entertainment and content, but it definitely cuts through if done right. Yeah. But at the same time, if you don't do it right, it feels instantly inauthentic. So it's a really hard balance to get. But the brands that do it the best are the ones that are really weird. I think McDonald's does a really great job. I think Duolingo obviously does a great job. Those are all fucking weird in the best way, but are entertaining, and they feel native to the platform, and they feel native to demographics language.
And you think about that work and you can kind of see how like those are all huge risks. Like you're telling the Duolingo owl to like have a fake BBL. Like I can just imagine, like being so scared to bring that to a meeting, but it's really like admirable because that work is like insane sometimes, but it's just like it's some of the work with the biggest risks that really do break through the most. And like going back to what you said about not overthinking, like overthinking can really be the death to some really great work. I totally agree with that. And something that I honestly have struggled with in the advertising industry is seeing too much process. You see like a brief get to one team and then it goes to one person and it goes to one person. And it's like going through all these people. It's going through the account people. It's going through the strategy team, whatever. And like each time I think you go that extra level, sometimes it can dull the work a bit. And like, how do you see that really in this industry? And then like, do you think that with that, like agencies are needing to evolve a bit in how they do approach work?
When it comes to process, I think we're still trying to figure it out as an industry. Because I've had instances where our internal process is so complicated that it dulls the work, like you said. But there's been times where we've removed a lot of the usual check-ins and the account people and the strategy and all that, gone straight up creative, and that's missed the mark because it's just declines. Like, they're not seeing what they thought they. It becomes too zany or too wacky. It doesn't have enough. It hasn't been thought through. That the guardrails aren't there. I think I don't know if there's a specific process as opposed to like if you surround the room with really smart people who know how to do great work, getting to great work should be pretty easy and quick, and the process should be expedited because everyone knows how to do their job well in the shortest amount of time possible. The difference between me and let's say junior necessarily isn't talent. It's the fact that I could probably get to a good idea or a platform a little quicker,
Mm.
and I can build it out and make sure it's hitting all the marks a little more efficiently.
Yeah.
You're just putting more time into your muscle really, so you can lift more weight. So if you're surrounded by people that know how to do that consistently and confidently, then the process should be quick.
Yeah.
As opposed to trying to fine tune a perfect, model of efficiency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So true.
Yeah.
So, like, would you say for growth and success as a creative, how important really is working hard and just, consistency in your work versus really just focus on having some breakthrough ideas or big awards?
It's hard because, so it's hard for me to answer that just because I suffer from like a few things. One is I suffer from imposter syndrome, which is great. The other things I suffer from is like this kind of immigrant thing. Going back to it is like, especially if you're a certain type of immigrant, like you're never working hard enough. So my brain is always like, I haven't done enough. I haven't won enough awards. I haven't worked hard enough. I could have worked harder. I could have been more efficient. Like it, it. There's times when my wife has to remind me that like you've actually done a lot. You've traveled a lot. Like I'm always like I haven't traveled enough. I haven't worked enough. I haven't done enough ideas. Well, no, you actually have. Like think about it. Like this is actually pretty impressive. I guess. So I have worked incredibly hard, but I've also probably haven't worked hard enough a lot of times. I would say that I think my hard work, I definitely worked hard. I think what I've really learned how to do is work efficiently.
Mm.
I think before it was a big hours thing. I think I've moved where I just know I have certain pockets of productivity that I need to balance out with video games or music or working out. Like throughout the day. I couldn't do the consistent like people that would just work. I used to work from that like from like let's say 10 to fucking 10 a night all the time. But it wasn't a productive 12 hours. I'd be like
Yeah.
walking around the agency, talking to people, grabbing coffee, like checking, reading, going on Facebook at a time. Now I'm just really kind of focused with that. I think in terms of your success as a creative, I think it's a mix of everything you said. Like I think awards are important. I want to be where here I am without the awards I've won. I think hard work is important because I think hard work resulted in me having a network and able to get when you work hard, you're building your muscle quicker, and then B, people are willing to give you more opportunities and more briefs. But I think all of that to be said is like it all needs to be in service of you building a voice. Ultimately, you get hired for the voice that you bring to the table, both creatively, but also from a leadership perspective and just presence. So I bring in a specific flavor, both creatively and as a leader, that I've developed over time through both making mistakes and hard work and good work and even making terrible shitty ads.
Yeah.
But I was always really conscious about making sure I'm building a persona that I felt could be of service to different agencies.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, the best way to move up is probably awards. Unfortunately, I just fucking hate it because awards are so subjective. But
Yeah, very true. I love to touch on the imposter syndrome portion because as you think about it, like I think all the greats in the world and all the, I don't know, all the impressive people have imposter syndrome. I don't think you could look at one leader and they don't have imposter syndrome. And like a lot of times we think imposter syndrome can be a negative thing, but like in a way, I think it can be a little positive because you're always going to keep going more and more. Yes, it's extremely stressful to have it. But sometimes if you think about it, like it's almost like a driver and it can help you get to where you are because you're like, I shouldn't be here, I shouldn't do this, but then you just like keep going. And I think it's it's something hard to deal with for sure, but I wonder, if it's just something that happens to the people that are always moving so quickly. And like you said, it's super important to be able to like work efficiently and take that time. Like the more time you give to this yourself, I think the better you can be at work, the better you can show up. And you really do have to take that time to do those more personal things, and just
Yeah.
give yourself a little bit of that balance and honestly a break, because you also want to avoid getting burnt out, which can
Sure.
happen
Yeah.
easily.
Yeah. I mean, I hate everything that I hate every piece of my portfolio. Probably. Like I honestly, every time I put ideas down, I'm like, oh, this idea is so dog shit. Like it, yeah, I'm always like, they're going to find out I'm a hack. I always think I'm a hack. I think everyone thinks I'm a hack. It always, I think people don't think I'm talented
Oh my gosh. Well,
or do
you have
stuff.
some of the most incredible work ever. It's like extremely impressive.
Yeah, but none of that, to be honest, the reason why I think is impossible is like none of that is possible without a lot of people. Like a lot of people are behind the work. It's such a
Mhm.
team effort. Um,
100%.
so it's always hard for me to go, even if I penned it or not, like to be, I know what I'm doing because so many people had to make it better
Mhm.
and, really facilitate for that to come out. So I think that's probably why I think most great leaders recognize that their careers are built on the backs of a lot of people that
Yeah.
they're grateful for, and it's not a one man show. And I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes from because you know that like you need the help of others to be
Yeah.
great.
That's so true. Honestly, it's what makes though this industry so fun is the collaboration.
Yeah, sure.
Especially being on the agency side, like you get to collaborate with so many different minded people and people who have like I think what's interesting in the advertising world is I would say most people come from a little bit untraditional paths. Like, I've worked with people who used to be a teacher or used to live all over the world or whatever it is. And I think like everyone shows up to work with different perspective or, they're in different departments and you get to really collaborate so much, which is really fun. And even like people on the more business side of things at an agency world, they're even creative. And so it's fun in that way. Thank you so much, Omid. This was really great. And thank you for sharing your insights to the advertising world and just in your creative leadership. So, really appreciate you for joining the pod.
No, thank you, and keep doing what you're doing, and keep trying to help shine a light on really kind of younger. I'm old, but like younger creatives, younger people, best ways to work for younger people, and how they can persevere and find success. And I appreciate you, and of course,
Oh, thanks.
for anyone listening, if they ever want to reach out and speak to me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always trying to find time to help younger talent as much as
Oh,
possible. So
I love that. Thank you so much.